Namo Shivaya. Hari Om Namo Shivaya.
This is Ken Sheets, and I'm here with Nick Edwards and Patrick Flanagan and Janet. I don't know your last name. Hernandez. So we were talking about your bestseller, that you were the first ever really best-selling self-published book.
Yes.
And did over 1 million copies, and the title was
Pyramid Power.
Pyramid Power, and Nick's company is Power of Pyramids, and here we are in Chichen, Itza. So let's talk a little bit about that. So the how did that get started? I mean, why did you decide to self-publish?
Well, I wrote Pyramid Power in 1972, and I tried to get publishers interested, and they all rejected it and said no one would be interested in the book, in their opinion. And so I borrowed $5,000 and published my first hardbound edition of the books, and it took off like wildfire. I was glad then because I owned the book and all the profit on the book was mine. And it sold 1.5 million copies in hardbound, and printed it, published it January 2nd, 1973 is when we released it, with a 1973 copyright. And then about 2 years later, so we're January 1973, and in late 1974, Warner Brothers put out a book, Pyramid Power. You can't copyright titles of books. I was on a TV show, national TV show, and the interviewer had Max Toth's Pyramid Power from Warner Books, and he had my Pyramid Power. And he said, well, Patrick, you ripped off Max Toth's name, publishing your book after Max Toth's book. And how do you feel about that? And I looked at him and said, would you mind opening both books to the date of printing? And he said, okay. And he said, oh, okay, let's see. Your book was published in 1973, and Max Toth's was published in 1974. And he looked at me and apologized for saying that I had ripped off the title of Max Toth's book. It was the other way around. I come along and I build these pyramids, and they weren't very good pyramids. They were wooden dowels with plastic,
Yes.
molded plastic sheets over them as pyramid tents. And then I heard about a dentist who was treating dental implants under pyramids, and that he was having a 40%, I guess, rejection on dental implants back then. They weren't as good as they are now. And he treated the dental implants with pyramids, and that the rejection went away. And so I said, I have to see this dentist and see his pyramids. So I went over to see him, and he had this array of pyramids made out of tubing like this. And they were aimed at his dental implants, treating them, and he'd treat them before, he used them. And I said, where do you get these pyramids from? And he said, Nick Edwards, this guy Nick Edwards makes them, and I buy them from him. And I said, okay, well, I gotta meet Nick Edwards. So he gave me Nick's phone number, and I called Nick up, and then we became buddies, and he was selling the best pyramids. And we've been, basically, we were really good friends, and I lived in Marina del Rey out in California, and he'd come over and we'd race around town in our cars together, and we're buddies for a while, and then I moved away from LA, and we hadn't seen each other since like 1975, 76, maybe 78. Hadn't seen each other, and until now.
Yeah, 37 years later.
Yeah. And
That's great. And
we look different. but we still know
The energy's still the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The pyramid is really powerful. I took a picture of yours in Antarctica, and it looks beautiful. You know, and
When,
the snow and
Fantastic.
yeah,
When I first met Pat, I wanted to meet Pat because
I've heard of him.
I read the books by from Russia about the same time. They were talking about pyramids, sharpening razor blades, meat din rod, and I said, "There's got to be something going on." And then I saw Pat's book out. I went and bought the book, read it 2 or 3 times, and said, "I got to meet Pat." And he was living in Glendale before you
Yes.
moved, and I was in Burbank.
Yeah.
And I went over and I met a gentleman named Duke Longfray, which was working with Pat and his products, his tin, and he
Yeah.
had little tiny 1-inch pyramid grids and stuff. And became really good friends, and the doctor was Dr. Paris Garifas in Santa Monica, and he was a implant or oral surgeon. And these were subperiosteal implants. These are like blades that go into the jaw, and they're very a lot of trauma when you pound them in. And
Good Lord.
average was 42% rejection, and that means an infection, and then they got to pull this thing out, and you got to go through all this trauma. And we met at a party, and I had a table, and I had my pyramid set up. He says, "You know, Nick, I'm going to try these." And he would put the implant for a few days inside the pyramid, and then we had a grid of 9 pyramids this size, 3 rows of 3, and that would be on the patient during the operation. And there was no pain, even after the operation with the grid there
Yeah.
and the charged prosthesis. And he got on all the news, he got in write-ups in major magazines from this. That's how Pat saw it. He read it in a journal.
And
or
now
in
all
a
these
major
years
magazine.
later, Pat
No,
is.
somebody told me about it.
Oh,
Sorry. And now all these years later, Pat is going to do a foreword for your book.
yeah. I'm writing a book called The Guide to Pyramid Energy, Conversations with the Pyramid Man.
Wonderful.
And it's about what I've gone through in the 37 or so years making pyramids, all the unusual people I've met, the places I've been, as well as I have a writer that's also working with me, and he's fabulous, and he's been all over the world
Yeah.
with
But to
research.
have Pat do your foreword is going to be
And Pat did
awesome.
my forward,
Yeah.
and he's going to write a chapter.
And a chapter.
Right.
Yes.
What's the chapter going to be about?
It's going to be about, the discoveries I've made go kind of like in upward spirals. You know, they don't come around in a circle. They come around in a spiral. And so as I've gotten older and learned more and my science has improved, I take old things that I did before and take a new look at them. And so I've relooked at pyramids and what they do. So I'm going to write a chapter in his book about what I've discovered in the intervening years with my knowledge about how pyramids work. They work a lot differently than I thought they did back in '73.